Continuing on, tonight we will be still going into the world of medicinal weeds and wildflowers. Texas has a lot of medicinal plants. Just for those of you who aren't familiar with my past, I do have a master's in medicinal chemistry, the PhD in physical organic chemistry. And so my approach to herbal medicine is what has actually been proven by Western science. So when I'm talking about the different properties these plants have, there's at least one strong case study that shows, yes, this plant has this effect on the human body. Jumping right in. There we go. So like I said, the medicinal weeds and wildflowers of Texas. All right, last week we were talking about ragweed was the last plant, and there was so much interest in it that we ran out of time. So just to recap with ragweed, a plant that most people hate because of the wind-pollinated nature of it, causes allergies in a lot of people. I've actually shown that the leaves of ragweed, both the common and the giant ragweed, have a number of useful features. Really things to help you when you're suffering from colds and flu sort of issues. So it is a fever reducer. It will lower your fever. As I mentioned earlier, I personally feel fevers should be left to run their course, because the whole purpose of the fever is make the body too hot for the bacteria, that has infected you. And so the fever really is its own antimicrobial sort of effect. But if the fever starts going up above 106, 107, especially in younger kids, then there might be a need for a fever reducer. It soothes the general cold flu symptoms, just the achy, the runny nose, that sort of thing. It just helps you feel better, slows, kind of mellows out some of those symptoms. Anti-diarrheal. So especially if you are with the flu and expelling a lot of fluids out of your rear end, a tea made with the, sorry, I'm getting a very strange look from Merriwether, but a tea made from the ragweed leaves will help reduce and eventually end the diarrhea. Antibacterial, leading, well, I guess notovirus is vomiting. That's a virus. The ragweed does not work against viruses. It does work against bacteria. So if you have some sort of food poisoning, bacteria, E. coli based diarrhea in particular, the tea made from the ragweed leaves will help with that. Antifungal, especially like athlete's foot, jock itch, those sort of things, a tea washed several times a day in those areas with the fungal infection will help reduce that. I would also think then the children's disease, the thrush, when they get a fungal infection in their mouth, I would think a tea or gargle with the ragweed would help with that, but I haven't seen any actual research. That's just what I call a scientific wild-ass guess, or a swag, when I take two different scientific things and say, well, if A equals A and B equals B, A plus B might be useful. Okay, and then finally, it soothes skin irritation. So a wash of ragweed leaf tea, or tisane to be technical, or a poultice, while it doesn't have the slime of aloe vera, it does have some of the soothing effect. So you think of it as a cheap, plentiful replacement for aloe vera. So most of these properties are obtained by drying the leaves and making a tisane, aka an herbal tea out of it, or taking the fresh green leaves, mashing them up either in your mouth or in a blender, and putting them on the body part that's affected. When you find this, it's really a spring, summer, fall sort of plant. And pretty much any waste area around here is going to be loaded with ragweed. So that is ragweed. Do we have any questions?
Nope.
No questions. All right.
Oh,
Now,
wait,
whoop, whoop.
sorry, one popped up. So a tea doesn't always have to be ingested? Question mark.
Correct. So a tea or a tisane, first off, herbalists, I don't know why they do this, but technically a tea has to contain the tea plant, the Saxonea. If it's just herbs or plants and hot water, it's a tisane. The tisane can be drank or it can be used as a body wash. Think of it as like a Purell hand sanitizer, where you would brew it like you were going to drink it, but then instead of drinking it, you rub it on the body part where you have an issue. So no, you do not have to drink it. If you're trying to use it for external cures, then you want to apply it externally. Okay, any others? Or?
If known, please expound on the specific compounds in the plants that have medicinal properties.
Okay, what I recommend for that is you go to the books that I've listed on the Amazon Herbal Medicine page. Also, get an account on researchgate.net. I've found that throwing up molecules just causes a lot of people to glaze over, or we can talk about it direct message offline. But during the classes today, I found that really the going deep into the chemistry just bogs things down. So talk to me after class, and I'll hook you up with some information there. Moving on. So we talked about ragweed, and now let's go to sheep sorrel. Sheep sorrel, it is related to curled dock, so it is kind of a tangy, spicy, oxalic-y, acidy sort of food. Medicinal properties are kind of interesting. When I was putting all this together, I was going through the Foraging Texas, looking at all the plants I had, and then in a lot of the cases I was looking at the different books that I listed, like the Charles W. Kane's books and the Herbal Vademecum, those sort of things, because they go a lot into the chemistry. But I also go to this website called researchgate.net. And what that is it's a clearinghouse of scientific articles. So researchers can put up their work on there, their actual journal articles. So this is reviewed, published science. It met the standards needed by different scientific journals to be considered valid. And in researchgate.net, or sorry, researchnet.org, you can type in questions. It will bring up the papers that apply to that question or that subject. So sheep sorrel, medicinal, Rumex, medicinal, things like that. It brings up the articles. In many cases, if the full article isn't available there, it allows you to contact the researchers directly and request that they send you a copy of the article. And so far, it's been a very successful way of gathering these information. So, not expecting anything, I typed in the sheep sorrel Rumex acetosella in the ResearchGate, found out, is there any medicinal properties for it, and actually was surprised with several articles. And going through it, its main benefit is that it helps soothe inflamed respiratory tract tissues. So starting from your sinuses and down through your trachea, down into your lungs, your bronchial tubes, that sort of thing. So it's made as a tea. You drink it. You don't neti pot it. You don't pour it in your sinuses. You drink it. But from there, it does seek out and soothe those inflamed tissues from there. It also helps with bronchitis, especially the pain and the inflammation from the heavy coughing brought about from bronchitis. It does not help with asthma. So if you're having an asthma attack, get to the hospital, get your inhaler. Don't run around looking for sheep sorrel. Now, if there are zombies have taken over and there's no CVS or Walmart to get your asthma medicine, you might try it there. But in an asthmatic attack, asthmatic issue, don't go to this. This is more for the general, just really irritated from colds, coughs, allergy sort of things. Hopefully that makes sense. Where you find this is in open fields around Texas. It starts really right about now. It should be showing up, and then it will go through the spring. Let me just go back a page. It has a very distinctive leaf pattern, and if you go to foragingtexas.com and look up sheep sorrel there, you'll see it from a seedling all the way to mature, and you can really learn how to identify it. But the leaf has this, what I call a boar spear or a pig spear shape, where it has the long point and then two little wings that come off to the side. If you know anything about hunting pigs with spears, they have that little wing off to the side, so when you stab the pig can't just start running up the spear and still get you with its tusks. Those little wings keep the pig from thrusting the spear through its own body to get you. Pigs are mean. Here, let me show you. Oh, her face changed again now. So the sheep sorrel, like I said, I was actually surprised to learn that it has a proven effect on soothing the bronchial system, the respiratory system. So I've always just eaten it raw as food, but it actually has medicinal use. Go figure. Any questions? Nope, no questions. Okay. Slow night. There must be something on TV. Now, shepherd's purse. If you follow me on Facebook, you saw last week I posted a nice crop of shepherd's purse that I'd found down in Houston. It was along the golf course next to Herman Park. Can't harvest it there. It's, public property, and so I would need the permission of the park authorities to do so. But I could look at it, take pictures of it, and know that it's around. The shepherd's purse, it gets its name. If you look, the picture where my hand is, where it's on the pan, those little kind of heart triangular shaped pods are the seed pods. And someone decided those look like the old leather purses that shepherds had in biblical times, kind of like a drawstring bag. And so they just named this shepherd's purse after that. It is in the mustard family, the Brassica family. So it has a mild, peppery, kind of like a cross between broccoli stalk and a little bit of horseradish. It's really good when you can find it where you can actually harvest it. But from a medicinal point of view, you use the whole plant. One of its main things is it's really good as a vasoconstrictor, or basically it stops bleeding or greatly reduces bleeding. Now, this works both applied externally as a poultice, or if you are having some issues with internal bleeding, especially in the gut. And again, this is not to replace going to the emergency room. But in some case, if something happens and that isn't an option, actually eating the shepherd's purse can help stop or at least reduce some of the bleeding going on internally. It will help soothe the GI, the gastrointestinal, and the urinary tract. So if you are having problems, say, with kidney stones or something, or a bladder infection, it's going to help soothe some of the pain. My guess personally is that it's kind of like the cayenne pepper or the capsium, where it just kind of overloads the nerve cells and uses up all the chemical that the nerves use to transmit the pain signal. Now, the flavor, it's not as harsh as horseradish. If you've had just straight horseradish, it's like makes your eyes blow out, or wasabi. It's not like that. But it may have enough of the chemicals to basically tell the nerve cells that, shut up for a while. So it's good for that, for stomach distress, urinary tract distress, gastrointestinal stress, inflammations. It does help with the diarrhea. Keeping in mind, if you are taking an herbal tisane for diarrhea, usually you want to make quarts, like a gallon of the stuff, a quart at a time, and drink the gallon of the stuff throughout the course of the day. First, to just put a bunch of the medicine in, and second, to replace all the fluids you're losing to help avoid the dehydration that can occur with diarrhea. But yeah, those are the main things. Oh, also, then the bronchial tubes. So, kind of like the sheep sorrel that we mentioned before, the horseradishy effect can actually help sedate bronchial infection and bronchial inflammation, if that makes sense. So in that case, you just eat it. You don't even have to bother making a tisane out of it. You just take it and start chewing it up. Like I said, it has kind of a flavor between a a broccoli stem sort of thing, and a mild horseradishy mustard, very, very mild horseradishy mustard flavor. Good stuff. I like it just raw. Any questions?
No, wait. They keep popping up. Last minute.
Okay.
Would you have to get a permission to gather from under power lines? And is that a bad place to gather from?
Okay. Because people like to see the picture rather than me. Collecting under power lines, that is generally a forbidden area. Same as under railroad tracks. The power companies usually own that bit of property or at least have an agreement with the landowner for the right of way. The big issue, though, with the power lines is they do not want any sort of vines or plants creeping up the power line poles. Because if a vine creeps up there and eventually hits the power lines, you get shortages, you get fires, you get bad things happening. So to prevent that, a lot of power companies will just go through twice a year, 3 times a year, and spray a real strong herbicide underneath it and just knock everything down. So my general rule of thumb is areas where poisons have been sprayed, you don't want to eat. And you can pretty much guarantee power lines are one of those areas where they spray poisons. Same with along railroad tracks. The railroads do a similar thing where they don't want plants growing up over the tracks. And so several times a year they send a train through that all it does is spray herbicide along the sides of tracks.
All right, a couple more questions.
Oh, good. Questions.
For reasons other than having to do with the law, where should you not harvest shepherd's purse in general?
Oh, excellent question. So one of the things about this family of plants, so the brassica, the mustards, is many of them are what are called hyperaccumulators, which means they are really, really good at sucking minerals out of the soil and taking it up into the plant. They are actually used as a bioremediation plant where soils have been contaminated with different heavy metals to help draw the metals up, and then they harvest the plants and dispose of the plants as a toxic waste. So that means if there are bad elements, bad heavy metals in the soil, they will draw them up and become somewhat poisonous. So where are some soils that this can be a problem? A big one is around old buildings built in the mid-70s or earlier, were often painted with a lead-based paint. Over time, the lead flakes kind of flake off the building, fall into the soil around the base of the building, and release their lead into the soil. The shepherd's purse, it loves disturbed areas. It likes hanging out where humans have been messing around. And so it goes, ooh, right up here against the building, this is great. I'm kind of protected. There's good soil here. Let's just, grow. And in doing so, it's going to start drawing that lead up into it. So you got to ask yourself, could there be lead in this soil around this area? So lead paint was banned in the mid-70s. So buildings built after, say, 78 or 79, certainly after 1980, are not going to be painted with lead-based paint. And so the soil around them is fine. But earlier than 1980, you might want to try and figure out if there has been any lead-based paint used on the buildings. Another area, and this is kind of fascinatingly tragic in a way, is out in East Texas. If you're familiar with the Big Thicket, the Piney Woods area, a good example is the Davy Crockett National Forest. A lot of that area was old iron mining. In the early years of the 1800s, Texas was actually a big supplier of the iron used in the United States. Now, wherever you find iron naturally, you also find mercury with it. So wherever you find lots of iron, there's also going to be lots of mercury. If you talk to the park rangers at the Davy Crockett National Forest about drinking the water along the, from the ponds and streams there, they recommend against it because some of them can be contaminated with the mine refuse, the mine tailings, resulting in them being actually high enough in mercury content to be dangerous to drink from. They recommend if you're hiking in the Davy Crockett National Forest to bring all your water along. to avoid the risk of mercury poisoning. Other areas, going back to even your yard or family's yard, or someplace where you might get permission, fire ant killers, yard fungus killers, again, the poisons, those chemically are very similar to a lot of chemical warfare agents and are just as bad for people as they are for fire ants. Basic rule of thumb there is however long the package says the product is good for, from a usage point of view, you have to double that before you can safely harvest. So like a once a year herbicide, a once a year was like the Andro fire ant killer that you only have to put down once a year. You got to wait 2 years before really safely taking any plants from there. And so that's one of the big issues with the public lands and public parks and so forth. To keep this nice green weed-free area that people want to come and enjoy, they put down a lot of fire ant killer. They put down a lot of herbicides. They try and satisfy the majority of the people who want a nice green golf course sort of situation to play on. When they see weeds, they think neglect, and bad things go downhill from there. So those are just, I kind of went for a while on this, but this is a topic as a forager, it's really important to know. Not just if the plant is edible or medicinal, but is the environment in which it was growing, could that have contaminated the plant? Okay.
Several more questions.
Oh, several more, okay.
Could you take those seed pods and grow them?
Yes, that is something that's fairly easy to do. This is where we get into a gray area, and I will admit I have in the past, I've taken a few seed pods from different weeds in areas and taken them home and planted them and successfully grew it. In those cases, it was some wild carrot and some prairie parsley that I found growing along some back roads way out in the middle of nowhere. That being said, with the shepherd's purse, you need to pay attention to the seed pods. The lower ones on the stem will be ripening, and the higher ones up will be green and tender until you get to the flowers up at the top. So you want to look for the seed pods that are starting to turn brown and dry, and those will have the seeds. Now, if you remember the Bible, the mustard seed, it's an incredibly tiny, tiny, tiny little seed, so it's almost microscopic. So your best bet is taking the seed pods and just letting them dry in a tall cup. The seeds will kind of split open some, and then just take that and sprinkle it, wherever you're trying to grow the shepherd's purse. Occasionally, seeds are available online. I found through eBay and Etsy, two websites that are pretty good for finding rare or wild seeds. Okay, another?
Several questions. Do you know of an app where you can take a picture of a plant and verify the plant/medicinal purposes with the picture?
Okay, here's the thing. Facial recognition works really well for people because we have a very distinctive face structure. So it's really easy for a person to go and get a picture of the face and the computer to go eye, nose, teeth, jawline, things like that. With a plant, there's so many different types of plants, so many different angles and shapes and flowers and so forth, that just getting a picture at the right angle for the facial recognition to work is very, very, very difficult. That being said, there are a few like Leaf Snap and stuff that they claim will work, but if you read their promotional material, they'll say it's 90% accurate. The real world testing by real people who are just going out and trying to take a picture of a plant, not so good. And usually the feedback from the company is, well, you didn't get a good picture. And so you can end up spending an hour trying to get the camera lined up just right for on the leaf for the hope that the program will work. During that time, you could have gone through a reference book very quickly. Just the Peterson's Guide to Wildflowers. There's a couple other books out there. over on the shop Foraging Texas, there's a number of plant identification books. At this point, okay, yeah, I'm 50 years old. Damn computers. But that being said, I think you're better served learning how to properly identify the plant rather than hoping the app can identify it for you. And the apps, all they really do is give you a scientific name. It does not give you the medicinal properties. You got to go look that up, elsewhere anyway, usually in a book. There are some apps that have herbal medicine properties. I want to say the WebMD is one. There might be another. But again, you need to know what the plant is. The app isn't designed to help you identify the plant. It's like, I have this, I want to use this plant for X. What proof is there that it will do X? So as far as just going, not yet. Maybe someday, but it's going to be an incredible task because there's a lot more variation in plants than there are in faces, and time of year, the maturity of the leaf, all that, the flower. It's much more difficult than going eyes, teeth, jawline, ears. So someday maybe, but not yet. Disappointing, I know. Any others?
So a couple questions about pesticides, actually, and stuff like that. So nothing in my yard is edible if I have used chemicals and herbicides, and then they're asking 2 years from when you lay the herbicide down, or to use after the year it was effective.
It'll go to me. Okay, so the 2 years, if it is a once a year herbicide, you have to wait 2 calendar years from the day you put it down. So if you put it down on February 1st, 2016, 2017 passes, February 1st, 2018, you would be able to really take something. It sucks. And with herbicides, especially the Roundup, I know it's been in the news a lot, but if you look at the scientific data, it's actually a very weakly held together molecule. And with sunlight and water, the Roundup can actually be broken down in as little as 2 weeks. The question is, do you trust that or not? So that's Roundup. And now the fire ant killers and the bug killers, that is a persistent toxin, and that is a problem. So with herbicides, well, first off, stop using herbicides, use a fork, eat the weeds. Yay, green bean. But as far as the fire ant killers, boiling water, vinegar. Oh, if you want to kill weeds, use something like vinegar, just white vinegar, boiling water, things like that, because those don't have the persistent human toxicity that the herbicides and the pesticides do. But try and find, non-poisonous poisons, if you will. And there's things out there. Like I said, it might be a little bit more effort to go out there carefully with a pot of boiling water. But if you're looking to forage, it's really what you have to do.
Okay, so what about garden dust?
Oh, okay. If you buy garden dust, you are talking diatomaceous earth, the fine powder you use to kill insects. That's fine. That's basically ground up microscopic seashells. It's calcium carbonate. If you've taken a Tums, it's the same sort of chemistry. So the garden dust, if you are talking the diatomaceous earth, that's fine. I'd forgotten about that. That's actually a really good pesticide in a lot of cases. Another one is the, the roach killer, the acid. Not formic. Yeah, is it formic acid? I'm trying to think now. Yeah, the formic acid based ant poisons, ant killers, that's another one that's pretty much harmless. It breaks down very quickly in nature. So if you've put down like a line of the roach away formic acid around your house, a month later, you're good to go. Things like that. But the boric acid. Thank you. Who was that? Was that
Jonathan Osterberg.
Thank you, Jonathan. Yes, boric acid. I was thinking.
Actually, many people.
Okay, thank you, many people. I was saying formic acid didn't seem right, but yeah, boric acid. That's borax. That is, laundry detergent basically. Give it some time and you're fine there. So that's a really good one. That is my recommended one, is the borax. Man, I'm embarrassed. I could not. I was going. It's an acid. But okay. Any others?
Nope.
All right. Hey, we can go back to the presentation because we're already 33 minutes in, and I think we've talked two plants. Okay, shepherd's purse, really, really good plant. It's all over the place right now.
Oh, formic acid is in the ant bite.
That's right. Yeah. In fact, formic acid, they originally found it by distilling ants. A bunch of chemists put a bunch of ants in a beaker and distill them and say, hey, this stuff stings. What can we do with it? And then they go and drop it on the backs of the necks of their fellow chemists. Good times, good times. Okay. I'm serious. We used to do that. Okay, so sow thistle. This dandelion. It looks like a cross between a dandelion and a thistle that's all over the place right now. If you look closely at the leaves on the stem, these things can get 3 feet tall. Has a big green hollow stem the size of a drinking straw, back when drinking straws were allowed, and the leaf will kind of wrap around it. The leaves of the sow thistle have some really useful properties. First off, antidepressant. Now, let me say one thing about the sow thistle. The taste, it's bitter. It is a bitter herb. It's not something you just go munching on. It's not like a mint, but it does have the different properties here when you dry the leaves and make a tea out of it. So the antidepressant is a good one. It's an antioxidant. Remember, the antioxidants, one of the big things about the antioxidants is they scavenge the free radicals that are loose in your body. A free radical is basically a really reactive atom going around, and it's just messing with things, in particular DNA. So it causes damage to the DNA. Now remember, or if you think about it, the DNA, then damaged DNA is the main cause of cancers. So if you have free radicals swept from your body by different antioxidants, and really there are tons of antioxidants, but whenever you hear the term antioxidant, it's a subtle way of saying it reduces the chance of cancer. So that's really awesome. The leaves are antimicrobial. So again, an infection used externally in an infected wound or internally with some sort of food poisoning sort of thing, it'll help there. It's soothing to the urinary tract and kidney stones again. There's a number of plants that do this. This is a pretty good one because it's so prevalent. So if you have a bladder infection, a kidney infection, or some other thing that's just causing pain down there, it will help. Yeah, her facial expression. I need to put her camera up here too. It will help soothe that, which is a good thing. Sedative, sleep aid. So not drink it and knocks you out, but if your mind is kind of racing and you want to get to sleep, it will help soothe things down. It'll help slow the synapses down some and help you basically stop your brain from racing and allow you improve the chances of sleeping. Fever reducer. We talked about that with ragweed. If you are having an extreme fever and there aren't other options around, think of it as more of a side effect when you're doing these other things, which means, keep this in mind, if you have a bacterial bladder infection or a bacterial kidney infection and you are reducing the fever, you're actually prolonging the life of that bacteria. But on the other hand, you got the antimicrobial thing to come in there. So the fever reducing effect isn't going to be as big of a problem in this case if you're fighting a kidney infection or a bladder infection, because the plant itself does have that antimicrobial properties. Anti-inflammatory, so swelling, joints, or I haven't found anything specifically tied to lupus, but a number of the inflammatory diseases you might get some comfort from. as I said in other issues or other episodes, when you are trying an herbal remedy for something that you're already being treated with traditional Western medicine, something you buy at CVS or Walgreens, let your doctor know. It's just a good practice. The doctor, the more information he or she has, the better her or his overall diagnosis and work with you can be. So don't hide anything from a doctor. And finally, the pain relief. Basically think of sow thistle as a really good aspirin from the ground. Not as good as willow bark, but as a general sort of I don't feel so good sort of plant, it's really good for that. And it's very, very, very plentiful. Side note, sow thistle actually came from Europe. It's not native to North America. And over in Europe, it was grown as a garden vegetable, both for its food properties and for its medicinal properties. And it turns out this is one of those traditional medicinal plants that Western science has said, hey, you know what? They were right. Cool. So, very common. Any questions?
A couple. So first, once again, for long-time storage, a 50 mix of the tissue or tisane and 90 proof ethanol.
Okay. Hey.
Mr. Rust.
All right.
Always looking for the alcohol.
Yeah. Really, for this, I would just dry the leaves and let them, put them in a vacuum seal. The components of this, from what I've been able to determine, are more water soluble than alcohol stable. So you are better off taking the dry plant, and making the tisane out of it, rather than taking the tisane and trying to make a tincture, either adding alcohol or otherwise. If I were going to make an alcohol tincture out of it, I would make an elixir. So remember, an elixir is basically 1 part dried plant, 1 part like vodka or 100 proof alcohol, and 1 part honey, and mix those together and let them soak. And the reason for making an elixir where I have the honey in there rather than just a tincture where I would just have the ethanol is, quite frankly, sow thistle tea is not pleasant. It's pretty bitter. And the tincture would be just as bitter, excuse me. And so the honey helps cut some of that bitterness. And then also remember, honey has its own medicinal properties, especially from the antibacterial and soothing effects. So if you're going to do it, make an elixir out of it rather than a tincture. You might also just go and make a syrup out of it, where you mix the plant, the water, and sugar and boil it down into a thick syrup. But the syrups traditionally don't have nearly the lifespan of the just a dried leaf kept in a vacuum bag. Like I said, with the tincture, I'd be concerned about some of the medicinal compounds falling out of solution. I mean, yeah, you can shake it up really well, but alcohol is kind of expensive. So just go with this one. Just go with the dried leaves. Anything else?
Couple more questions.
Okay.
Which are the best parts for the tisane? For example, roots, leaves, stems.
Okay, with the sow thistle, the medicinal properties, from what I've been able to find and research, are located in the leaves. Not so much the stem, not so much the root. The highest concentration for some reason seems to be in the leaves. My scientific wild-ass guess on why is sow thistle, since it has a long history with human race. Let's go back a second. A lot of the medicinal compounds in plants are the plant's version of chemical warfare to protect itself from being eaten by insects, being attacked by fungus, that sort of thing. On a sow thistle, the stem is pretty tough, the root is big and tough. The leaves, however, are surprisingly tender compared to the rest of the plant. And so if an insect is going to be eating the sow thistle, it's probably going to go for the leaves. So over, tens of thousands of years, the sow thistle has developed its own chemical warfare battery of chemical warfare agents to try and stop its leaves being eaten, and so it stores them there. It does not need to make its root inedible because it's a big, tough root. So why protect something that doesn't need protection? Plants are as lazy as I am. Keep that in mind. Okay, anything else? Last question.
Could the tisane be pressure canned or frozen?
I would recommend against pressure canning an alcohol-based solution, just because the vapor pressure of alcohol is significantly higher than water, and there's a very good chance that your cans of alcohol or your jars of alcohol would explode in the pressure cooker. Even though you are increasing the pressure, the desire of the ethanol to evaporate away and turn to a gas is probably going to exceed the pressure. So I would don't do that. And then as far as freezing it, remember that alcohol depresses the freezing point of water. So if you mix water and alcohol together, it has to be made a lot colder to freeze out. And just Applejack, so fermented apple cider, up in New England, one of the ways they would increase the alcohol content of it is take basically the barrels of it, the buckets of it, put it out on a cold winter's night, and eventually the water would separate out and freeze. Not all of it, but a part of the water would separate out and freeze. And they would take that ice and dispose of it, just throw it out, and then they basically just removed water from it. So they're not so much increasing the alcohol amount as much as reducing the water amount. So if you're trying to freeze a tincture first, I mean, you got to get down in the -40s, -30s, depending on the concentration. And if you're 50% alcohol, yeah, you got to get down really, really, really low. So you're not going to be able to freeze it. So yeah, just dried leaves. Come on, dried leaves. Save your money. Save the alcohol for me. Okay. Anything else?
Nope.
All right. Moving on. I love these questions. These are great questions. Okay, spiderwort, aka cow slobber. This plant, it's related to the dayflower. It's like a dayflower on steroids. It's a big, thick plant. It seems to like, in Texas, it likes sandy, damp, somewhat shaded, woodsy areas. There's tons of it along Spring Creek. Lots of it in areas where there's just a little bit of water to keep it growing. And the flower, the three-petaled flower, it's blue in color. Go to Foraging, Texas, look up spiderwort. You'll see a bunch of pictures of it. Now, you heard me mention another name for it, cow slobber. Cow slobber. If you cut open the spiderwort stem, it starts oozing a thick, viscous slime. Think like a aloe vera slime or okra slime. Big, like a big dog drooling or a big cow just go bleh, slime. So the slime, think of it as another form of aloe vera slime. It is a demulcent, which means it helps soothe inflamed, damaged skin. So if you have a rash, skin, elbow, knee, basically a minor burn, anywhere where you would think aloe vera would be good on this, the crushed up spiderwort stem is also really good on it there. So like I said, it soothes the inflamed red tissue. It helps against spider and insect bites, fire ant bites, things of that nature, wasp stings, bee stings. It doesn't draw the poison out. It doesn't take the stinger out, but it just kind of suppresses the body's response to, say, the formic acid that a fire ant injects into you when it bites you. If you consume this slime, it's, again, like you can consume aloe vera, but it's more like a slippery elm sort of thing in that it works to soothe the whole GI tract. If you remember the old Pepto-Bismol commercials, it coats, it soothes. That's what chewing on spiderwort stem will do. It will release that mucilaginous material. It's like chewing on okra. I mean, it's slime. It's not always easy to get down. And so some people will, reduce it to boiling it, making a tea out of it, and drinking like a somewhat diluted slime, and that makes it a little easier to swallow. Now, keep in mind, this slime does also trigger pooping. I mean, it is a laxative, so keep that in mind. It's not like an X-lax level laxative, not like phenolphthalein. But if you're about to go on a long car trip or something like that, you might think twice about chewing on some spiderwort. Just keep that in mind. But if you have a sore throat or any sort of irritation and throughout the GI tract, chewing on the spiderwort stem will release the slime, the mucilaginous material, and help soothe it. So it's really good for that. Side note, from a food point of view, this slime is a decent thickening agent. So how to use it? Again, you want to mash up the stem. Don't bother with the leaves. Don't bother with the flowers. What you really want is the stem, because that's where a majority of the slime is. There is going to be slime in the leaves, but not much. And it's, just go where the slime is. And then the flowers, no real medicinal properties from the flowers. This plant, I have winter spring down. It should be spring through winter. In other words, all year round. A hard frost will knock it back for 6 weeks maybe, but we're talking several days at 25 degrees Fahrenheit to really knock the spiderwort back. But normally it's available all year round. So the when part should say spring to winter, all year round. And again, it likes woodsy, damp areas, partially sun to full shade. It's kind of rare in full sun, fieldy areas. Sometimes you'll find it growing amongst elderberry or other plants that like damp areas, sycamore, river oaks, river birch, things like that. But really kind of sandy banks around streams and ponds is a good place to look for it. Couple questions.
So how much can you use for your tummy before it gives you diarrhea?
Okay. I don't know. Every person is different. And it's so, like anything, in this case, I would say 2 tablespoons of it chopped up and kind of sucked and chewed on would probably be okay. You got 2 things going on here, actually. So you have the laxative effect from the slime, but also remember the stems, and I didn't mention this, but the stems are high in fiber. So fiber has its own laxative properties. So you keep that in mind. But this is something you really have to test for yourself. That's one of the issues with herbal medicine, is getting a consistent dose of the medicinal properties from plant to plant is kind of difficult because they're wild, they're undomesticated. There's a lot of genetic diversity in them. So you can get different amounts of compounds from the same plants, even offsprings of each other and so forth. So this is a experimental sort of thing. You have to find out for yourself.
Who volunteers to chew the mucus out of a pile of spiderwort and tell us how much you have to eat?
Of course, you know what I'm thinking. All right, okay, seedlings, here's what we do. You ready? The new YouTube challenge. Forget Tide Pods, forget ice water, okay, it is, forget cinnamon, it's the spiderwort chew.
Before it lubes your shoot, yeah.
Oh, yeah, before lubes your shoot. Okay, we have the new YouTube viral video shoot lubing using spiderwort. All right, this is why you all tune into this show. All right, okay, so this is what of course, yeah, okay. I was figuring it was the instigator. So yeah, Heather Peer, if you're out there or some of the others, let's figure out how we're going to make this the next challenge. It's a hell of actually, this makes a lot of sense, people. Think about it. Instead of poisoning themselves, kids will have to go out into nature. Excellent. They're going to have to learn plant identification. Excellent. They're going to poop a lot, which keeps them out of trouble, I guess. All right, so we got a plan here.
Uncle Paul says, I thought that's what little brothers were for.
Well, yeah, there's that too. Here, Paul, try this. Sorry about that. Anyway, wow.
Science.
For science, yes. You know, I gotta. Okay, so you triggered the scientist in me. There's got to be a way of correlating concentration of mucilage to shoot fruiting. Well, I forgot the term we were using already. Lumi, yeah. There's probably something. Okay, I guess I know what I'm going to be doing during lunch tomorrow. Is looking up that.
Prickly ash challenge next.
Oh, well, no, that's not a challenge. That's fun. Okay. We are at 8:53. I think at this point, rather than move on to the next plant, we are going to now do Mark Merriwether's Words of Wisdom. I'm not doing Merriwether's Real World. I'm going to just do that once a month. So I've been thinking about some things, and you might be familiar recently, was her name Maria Commando, something like that? Komodo. This person who is leading a movement to help people declutter their lives, get rid of stuff they don't want. And the theory is you take something, you hold it, and if it doesn't give you joy, throw it out. That being said, not buying a lot of stuff means you don't have to throw out a lot of stuff. Now, most of you, when you're looking at some purchase, you usually compare the price to some other object. So just for instance, back when I was in grad school, when I was looking at the price of, say, a new CD or a cool shirt or something like that, I go, okay, that is $11, which is equal to 22 beers at 50-cent mug night at the pub. So I would look at the value, I would, base this new purchase versus something I know and understand the value of and how important it is to me. So I'm not saying now, compare your purchases to beer, except for maybe Kevin. Compare it to minutes of your life. You all work for a living. You all spend a massive amount of your day doing something to earn the money to live. Sit down, include your commute time and worry time at home, and figure out your life. What is the dollar amount, per minute of your life? And you might be terrified by the answer, because it could be pretty big. $10 a minute or something like that. And so now, when you're looking at wanting to buy some gizmo, gadget, bright, shiny object, think about it. How many minutes of my life will I have to put, slaving away to get that thing? And suddenly you find a lot of things become less important to have. So use time, your lifetime, the value of your life, the value of the minutes of your life, to compare it to the bright, shiny object and decide, was it worth this? And you'll find a lot of times it's not. And so if you're not buying as much, in the end, the white-clad commando cleaner lady doesn't have a use in your life because you don't have a lot of stuff. I mean, I'm 50, I'll be 51 in a few months, and I look around and I think, if this house burnt down, other than my family, and including wedding albums and all that, if I lost everything, I'm okay with that. It's stuff. It would, kind of suck. The biggest loss would be all the foraging Texas photos and all that, but I just go out and get more. But if you start looking at what you want out of life and comparing it to how hard you work to get the money to do it, you find a lot of stuff isn't as valuable as you thought it was. Your time is a lot more. So with that note, We got 2 minutes left. I just want to thank you for spending your, hour of your life with me. It means a lot because I know the value of the minute of a person's life. And the fact that you all want to spend it here boggles my mind. So thank you. Thank you. You honor me with that. Anything else? I guess at this point,
Nothing else.
okay, no questions, no smart aleck remarks. Okay.
The story of
cool.
your dorm in South Dakota?
Is that Paul?
Yep.
Get ready for a story.
No. Oh, well. Damn you, Paul. Because, no. I'll tell you what, that will be next week. I'll give you something to look about. But, yeah. Okay, yeah. All right. At that note, I will see you all next week. Merriwether and I, next Wednesday, 8 p.m. Here we are, sharing a little bit of our lives with you. Until then, good night. God bless. Thank you very much.
Good night.